Today's episode features Greg McClure, the CEO of Realty One Group Complete. Their company started 10 years ago and has already amassed over $1 billion in sales volume within real estate. And now, kind of put that into perspective, they're ranked 361 out of 15,000 nationwide companies. Today's episode's a good one. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Sikhana podcast. I'm Akam. I'm here with Greg McClure. Greg, a little background on you. You started in construction, went to a limousine company, went into firefighter, went into real estate, and then eventually started in brokerage. Talk us through a little bit of how that went.
You got it, man. I think we're done today.
Yeah.
Right? That's pretty good. You have a good memory. We talked about that a long time ago.
Yep.
I don't know. Where do you want to start, man?
Let's start with your construction. I know you mentioned that you came out of high school and you basically operated that as an entrepreneur, just starting out of high school.
Yeah, I knew nothing about construction. I was working at a hotel. And a buddy of mine said, hey, I'm working construction and I'm making really good money and you should come do it with me. And so I was like, okay. So went to work for this construction company building custom homes. And 3 weeks later, they went out of business.
Okay.
So before that, I don't even know if I'd ever swung a hammer before. But so my buddy's like, well, hey, I have an idea. We can go do something called piecework, which means you don't get paid by the hour, you get paid by the job.
Makes sense.
So I said, well, how do we do that? And he goes, well, let's just go to a construction site and we'll talk to the foreman and see what happens. So we went there and we said, hey, we want to side the outside of the house. What do you pay for piecework? And I think at the time it was like $500. And so what that means is you just get paid $500 if it takes you a month, takes you a day, doesn't matter. So that's what we did. And I think the first house, it took us like a week to do. But I think there was 30 some houses. By the end of that, we could do one in like 2 days. So we're making pretty good money.
Yeah.
So then we went out to Elk Grove, and that's when Elk Grove was really, really booming and growing. And so we went up to this. So I've been in construction like less than like 6 months, and went to the job site and said, hey, we want to, can we do all of the house? They're building 135 houses.
Yeah.
And so we convinced the guy, I don't know how, we were 18, 19 years old. We convinced him to let us do them all. So then as we started doing them, like other people would show up and say, hey, we want to do this. So what we did was we started, like, say you came to the job site. Let's say I was getting $1,000 a house. I would say, well, if you could do it for $700, you could do it. So then I would get $300 override on every house. So then it just built up to like we had like 15 crews working for us, and we were doing less construction and more just managing, and that's just kind of how it started.
Yeah, and that
it blew up from there. Yeah,
that was out of high school.
Yeah, I was 19.
Yeah, so this whole podcast I talked to you earlier about this is just centered around young entrepreneurs, high schoolers, people in college, people in their 20s, just trying to start that business. Yeah. For you in high school, what type of person were you? Were you procrastinator? Were you got your work done? Were you a school type of person? Straight A's? What did they look like?
Yeah, so I was a really good student, but school was very boring for me. Mm-hmm. I think it was just easy for me. Yeah. So I didn't really study. I ended up with a 4.0 graduating high school, but it was just because school was easy and I didn't have to put much effort and energy into it. So I was kind of bored, and I think that was kind of what started my whole entrepreneurial journey. I realized, I could work for somebody and there's only a finite amount of money you can make. If you're working per hour, there's only 8 hours in a day, right? Or like in this story I just told you about construction, you can get paid by the job, and then you can start becoming more efficient, create processes to do more, less amount of time, and create more margin. So,
makes sense.
Yeah.
And in that time in construction, what was one of the biggest things that you learned about entrepreneurship, about yourself, that kind of thing?
I think kind of leveraging other people. Okay. So, again, I can only do so much in an 8-hour workday, but if I have 15 crews working for me, I could scale and do so much more. So scaling a business, learning how to scale a business, I think I learned, when I was 19 years old, to become more efficient, have systems and processes. Even back then, in hindsight, looking back, like I didn't have like a set process we followed, but we really did have a process in the way we did things. So I think that was kind of the ground floor of starting that journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of shift it into now what you do, just Realty One Row Group Complete.
Yes.
And you started that in 2014. And within now, not even 11 years, around 10 years now, has just exploded. I mean, you've went crazy. I know a lot of people talk about how the first 3 years of business are the hardest 3 years, but how was your journey within those 10 years of just exponentially just growing?
Yeah, I would back up even further than that, because I actually launched my first brokerage in 2005.
Okay.
And it was a small boutique-based brokerage right in Roseville, right here locally. And for 9 years, I couldn't really grow it. I struggled. And it was what we call kind of a traditional model brokerage. And I started thinking, man, I don't want to wake up one day and just realize the entire industry has passed me by. Yeah. So I really started trying to figure out like what's new in the industry, what are the changes coming in the industry. And that's when kind of I stumbled across Realty One Group. So I remember when we started, my wife said, well, what's plan B? Like, what if this doesn't work?
Yeah.
Right. We have a family and, all that stuff. And I said, there isn't one. There's no plan B. So we got to make it work. And so that was kind of my driving thing. Like failure can happen, but it wasn't going to be for lack of effort, energy, research, data, all that stuff. It was going to be, if it failed, it was going to be because of something else.
And real quick, for people to better understand your position working every day, a lot of people look at real estate and the first thing they think of is a real estate agent. Yeah. If you can get a little bit of background of like over the span of a few years, like the things that you could do just besides an agent, what would that look like? What do you do?
I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do kind of related to real estate. And if you watch HGTV, you can see a lot, people flip homes, and there's a lot of different things you can do. I manage an organization much like any other organization. So my duties and responsibilities, revenue, expenses, growth, all of those things is really what I focus on. We have just a little over 1,000 agents in our organization. So there's a lot of managing of people, providing tools, providing growth opportunities for those agents. That's extremely important. So, you sat with me one day and you kind of saw a little bit of kind of what I do. Yeah. And so it's really, I'm just running a large organization. Makes sense. Everything. It's no different than running any other type of organization. This just happens to be real estate. Yeah.
And it's obviously being in this industry for so long and just starting, and obviously you said you had failure, you kept going. Within those 10 years around in the industry, what was those few traits that you looked for in people when you went to partner with them or went to hire them? What were those traits that you look for?
What the biggest one I think is, and I think for an entrepreneur, as a real estate agent is an independent contractor. Yeah. So they have a lot of flexibility, and sometimes people thrive in that, and sometimes people struggle. No. They always say like for children, small children, like they thrive with kind of parameters, and I think adults do too. So. I think when the type of person that I found that has been most successful is the one that just kind of goes for it. There's a term that people call different things. It's called like preparation paralysis. Yeah. People get ready, but they don't ever do anything. And I'll share a quick story with you. This was probably 10 or 12 years ago. There was 2 agents that joined us kind of about the same time. Uh-huh. And one of them was a retired executive. He was a C-level executive. I won't name the company he worked for, but he was a C-level executive, been there for 30 years, highly successful business person. He retired and was like, I'm bored. I don't know what to do with my life. So he's like, I'll get into real estate and kind of do that, right? At the same time, this other person joined. And she was a single mom, and she kind of struggled most of her life. And so there was these 2 people starting at the same time. And he just, every step, every process, he kind of just overanalyzed, overprocessed everything. And a year later, he was out of the business, had never sold one house. And a year later, she just dove in. She's just like, what do I do? I'm like, do A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. And she did it. No matter what, she just did it. And she didn't have that fear of like, what if I don't know what I'm doing? And a year later, she was highly successful and still is today. Yeah. So what I think good entrepreneurs, the ones that just do it, you know, fear is kind of a weird thing. Sometimes I think people, right before we came on, you mentioned like some people have like fear of failure and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I think sometimes people have fear of success, which is a weird concept to think about.
I'm going to talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I won't steal your thunder, man.
No. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, I remember this agent coming to me and she said, Greg, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave the brokerage.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, you know, why? And she's like, well, there's a lot of really successful people here. And, I just find myself measuring up to them. So I want to go someplace where there's not as successful people. And I was like, that's when I realized like fear of success is a real thing. I mean, it raises the expectations. People think of you differently. They look at you differently. Now you have to kind of produce things at a different pace. And so I think that's interesting.
Yeah. What in all your years owning businesses, and I know you did the limo company too.
Yeah.
What was a few lessons that you've actually taken away that you still implement every day, or just
process before people is the biggest one.
Okay.
So I think a lot of times, you know, small business owners or entrepreneurs, as they start growing and as they start scaling, they'll say, "Oh, I need to hire somebody. I need to hire an assistant. I need to hire, you know, whatever." And what I realized a long time ago is before you ever add a person, you have to make sure that your systems and processes are in place. If you hire somebody and then try to develop systems and processes, then it pulls your focus away from whatever business you're doing. Now you're trying to create systems and processes to keep this person busy. So process before people.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things that I've learned. And then another one that I think is really, really important, especially when you start managing people at scale, is taking accountability for yourself. And so, for example, I use this acronym that I came up with called POET, POETT. Okay. Process, objectives, expectations, tools, and training. POET. So let's just say I give you you're working for me and I give you a project. At the end of the project, success or failure, I sit down and say, did he understand the process?
Yeah.
Did he understand the objective? Did he understand the expectations? And did he have the tools and training to be successful? And if any of those are no, it's my fault. So I failed to give you the proper whatever. If all those are yeses and the project failed, then it's your fault.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So those are some really good things that came up with that. Yeah.
How?
I don't know. You know, I was kind of analyzing, and I think taking accountability is really, really big. And I think I've always done a pretty good job of being accountable to myself. Like if something goes wrong, it's my fault, you know? And so I was trying to kind of create something that I could kind of analyze things on an ongoing basis. And you know, I talk to my team about that all the time. POET, you know, do you have the process, objectives, expectations, and tools and training to be successful?
Yeah. So. And real estate is known for just, you know, one who enters that industry needs to have a network, needs to have connections. How did you grow your connections and how have you been utilizing them ever since?
It's interesting. I think if you talk to a lot of real estate agents, they don't like to look at themselves as salespeople, right? Like, you know, I'm not a salesperson. I help people achieve the American dream, which is okay, but they're licensed as salesperson, right? So at the end of the day, you are a salesperson. So I think the biggest thing, you know, growing your network or no matter what is you got to create community. You got to talk to people. I talk about this all the time. Like, in order to be successful in real estate as a real estate agent, you have to have 3 to 5 conversations with people a day. And that's within your group or within your sphere of influence. And then even past that. So, for example, I sell you a house tomorrow. And then in my mind, I'm like, well, I mean, Acom isn't really going to buy a house probably for the next 5 or 6 years. Yeah. But the importance of creating that community, creating that relationship with you to grow your network is you probably know somebody that's going to buy or sell. So I need to continue to grow that relationship with you, grow that community with you, so I can access your sphere of influence. Does that make sense? We all have a sphere of influence, the people that we come in contact every day. So that's how you have to try to build your community or build your network, whatever you want to call it, is constantly re-engage in creating that community and not be short-sighted to say, well, I know Acom's not going to buy a house, so I need to move on. It's really the people that now it becomes the people that you know, the people that know you, love you, like you, and trust you. That's now who I want to get engaged with.
And now if you could bring all of that into just a general for people who want to start a business, your advice, just kind of you expanded on it, but just on a broad basis, what would be those tips?
Well, I would say, I mean, anybody starting a business, I mean, research, data, research. I mean, you got to understand, competition and your market. And, before I launched my first brokerage and really my second one, it took me 1.5 years of research before I launched my business. And looking back, I probably could have shortened that time frame down a lot, but I did a lot of market research. I knew every one of my competitors. I knew their strengths. I knew their weaknesses. I tried to make sure, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but I tried to make sure that there was a unique value proposition that we offered that no one else offered. So I would think, for somebody starting out, make sure you understand the dynamics of the market that you're entering or the space, whatever it is, an ice cream shop, a restaurant, a real estate company, whatever it is, you need to understand the market and understand, consumer behavior and how you are going to provide something that maybe no one else is doing. So that's kind of my biggest advice. And then just don't be afraid, Go. Sometimes you just got to go for it, right? Like walking up to that construction site when I was 19 years old and trying to convince this guy that we knew what we were doing. Yeah. We had no clue, but had nothing to lose.
Fair. Now we're going to do a new segment. I talked to you about this earlier, but for those of you who don't know, one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs or just younger people who want to start a business, one of their biggest problems is fear and worrying about when to start, or like you said, that paralysis of just preparing, things like that. I found online the top, biggest reasons that people don't actually start their business or take that step. And I want to kind of tell you each one. There's 6 of them. And just kind of have you share your insight on that. If you've seen that, how you would overcome that.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Start with fear of success, like you mentioned.
Yeah. It's weird. I mean, I don't understand that, but I've seen it. A lot of people I think are great idea people, and it's just hard for them to execute. But I think the fear of success is, like I said, if you become successful, then people around you, their expectations change of you, the way they view you becomes different. So there's like this weird dynamic, and a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with it. A lot of people don't become entrepreneurs, or they don't promote within their business or wherever they work, because it changes the dynamic. And so it's kind of a weird concept, but I believe it. There's a real thing, a fear of success. I don't understand it, but it's there.
Yeah. Next one's fear of failure, which is I think the most common one.
Yeah, I mean, there's I don't know. If I were to go back to college, I think I would study sociology, because I think people are fascinating, and I think entrepreneurs can learn a lot by just kind of the way people react to certain things. And I think sometimes a fear of failure is kind of rooted deep down when people are really young, and maybe there's an event that happens in their life and it kind of sticks with them through the rest of their life. But if you talk to any successful entrepreneur, and I know you've talked to a lot, that a lot of them have failed a lot, and there's no perfect science. And so overcoming that is tricky. But like I said earlier, sometimes you just got to go for it and make sure there's no plan B. And that puts a little added pressure on you.
Yeah, and that same answer is what I'm assuming this next one is financial instability. People not knowing, hey, will this money make it? Will this money work? I think is the same idea.
Yeah, I mean, and that's real, right? Like we all have bills to pay. We all have, we have to eat. We have to do so. Especially for young entrepreneurs, I would say I would leverage, what support your parents can provide, or, roommates can provide, and stuff like that. And as we get older and older, that financial responsibility gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think people tend to take less risks as they get older because of that financial component. So if you could do it at an earlier age when things are much more simple in your life, I think that's much better.
Yeah. And the next one that I think any entrepreneur needs to get over, but you can let me know, is fear of rejection.
Yeah, I think that goes back to kind of what I was kind of describing, like salesperson. Like sometimes you have to get over that fear of asking for the business, so to speak. If you if you sell apples at an apple stand and you're afraid to ask people to buy an apple, because you're going to be in trouble. But so you could use that simple analogy and expand that through business and understand that, you have to get over that fear. And I'll share a quick story with you. I had one of my agents, she said she was kind of an introvert, which is interesting to be in a sales position, and especially in real estate, because you have to build that community, so well. She was kind of an introvert, and she found her success through open houses. Okay. And I was like, that's just weird to me to think that, because like, that's not your personality. And she said, well, when I go do an open house, I change my personality. And she goes, it's almost like acting. So her fear of rejection, in her mind, she could just flip a switch and become like this different persona in that moment. And she was great. She was outgoing. And then when it was all done, she just flipped back to her normal self. So, very interesting for sure.
Yeah. Next one, and this is gonna be our last one, is it's the fear of not having enough experience to be able to start something.
Yeah. Remember my construction story? Yeah. I was 3 weeks into it, and I don't know if that's a fake it till you make it kind of scenario or what, but I mean, I think that could almost tie back to the fear thing, so the fear that you don't have enough experience. Sometimes you just got to go for it. Yeah. And I think that maybe that comes with, confidence and drive. When I told, Katie, my wife, that there was no plan B, I really meant it from the perspective of I was going to do anything I could. I was going to learn. I was going to grow. I was going to grind no matter what to make it successful. So if you don't have enough experience, especially in today with technology, you can learn things really, really quick. Yeah. Yeah.
And you talked about just taking that step, but for those who are, doing the research and all that, I know Realty One Group Complete does it very well, but just making yourself unique. How do you stand? I don't know, for you guys it's the purple cow, and people don't know what that means yet. Yeah. But how do you guys, as a business, stand out from other people and be different?
Well, specifically to Realty One Group, we call it culture, which is cool culture. And I always say, like, well, you could just walk into one of our offices and it's going to look and feel different than anything that you've ever been around. Yeah. And sometimes people can't even explain it. They're like, man, this is different. And so, Realty One Group, our approach is when we looked at the industry and we saw kind of a little bit of a stale, outdated industry. And so we kind of took advantage of that and kind of created what a more of a fun, open, community-based environment that really draws people in. Yeah. So, that was one of the things. Not to get too deep in the weeds, but our model is much different than other brokerages models, which that kind of set us apart as well.
Makes sense.
So, the way we do things, the way we operate, the way, commissions and all that stuff is done, we're very, very different than other brokerages. So that was another kind of unique value proposition that we had.
Yeah. And in terms of technology in 2025, technology just went crazy.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence. And now, people are using that.
We might not even be real.
Yeah.
Right?
It could be all fake.
It could be all fake.
But how would you, let's say you're starting a business or you have a business, how would you leverage that?
Yeah. Oh, here's the thing, man. When it comes to technology, it has to make you more efficient, has to make you more money. It has to move whatever you're trying to do forward.
Okay.
If it adds steps to your processes, technology is a great thing. It has to make you better in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. And yes, I encourage people to use technology, but sometimes you start stacking technology on top of technology and it creates more steps or more processes. I read this article a long time ago about Google, and I don't know if they still are today, but they were obsessed with making their search screen with nothing on it. Just a little search box. And whatever you typed in there would provide what you needed. When at the time, other search engines, you went to their page and there was so much stuff on the page. It was crowded and noisy. And their line of thinking was, there's too many steps. So technology is a great thing. Leverage it. There's amazing technology out there, but make sure it's not adding steps and processes to whatever you're trying to accomplish. It should make it more efficient. It should make you more money. It should make you better at whatever you're doing, not adding steps to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what's your kind of process when you are looking over, how these certain systems either help you or not?
That's exactly what I look at. Okay. I mean, we look at technology all the time to see if it can make our business better. And there is this AI-based technology that I've been looking at, and what I realized, it will impact our workflow. Like, it was incredible. Like, if you sat down and saw it, you'd be like, "This is amazing what we can do." But it added so much to our workflow. It would actually create, even though we think AI can do anything for us, which it probably can, but in this particular case, I realized the technology would be adding steps to our process, which would slow us down, bottleneck certain parts of our operations. And so we chose not to move forward with it.
Yeah. And how did you, sharpen your own entrepreneurial skills, your leadership skills? How did you do that?
Trial and error. Made a lot of mistakes. I've been an entrepreneur now for a long time in a lot of different businesses, and I've screwed up a lot. And so you just got to learn from them, and you got to be accountable to yourself, accountable to the people around you. I talk about it all the time. Like, if something goes wrong, I'm ultimately responsible for it. So I have to take accountability for it and learn from it and get better. So, I'd love to sit here and tell you like, oh, I listened to all these self-help books and all these business books and all these podcasts to kind of hone my leadership skills. But at the end of the day, we're just dealing with people. Treat them like humans and be compassionate. Hold yourself accountable, but hold them accountable too.
Yeah.
So.
And did you have any books that you read, speaking of that, any habits that you formed, anything that's helped you keep your business life and your I guess family life separated, or is there any boundaries that you set for that? Or
well, I guess if we want to do a 2-part question, I mean, there's a book that I read, I don't know, along 15 years ago. It was called The Purple Cow.
Yeah,
and I read it and I was like, it didn't really impact me that much.
Yeah.
And then when I was about to launch Realty One Group in this market, I read it again, and then it just really impacted me. So that's a big one. And The Purple Cow is not a real estate book. It's just about standing out in business. Whatever business you're in, like, you have to stand out. And kind of to summarize the book would be, if you were driving down the road past a field of cows, just miles and miles of cows. After a while, the cows just all start looking the same, right? Mm-hmm. What if you were driving along and all of a sudden there was a purple cow standing in the middle of the field?
Yeah.
You'd probably stop your car. You would get out. You would take a picture of it. You would tell all your friends about it, and you would never forget the purple cow. Mm-hmm. So take that and apply it to your business. If you can be the purple cow in your business, people will talk about you. People will never forget you, and people will tell all their friends about it.
And you have managed so many teams. I know when I shadowed you, I just saw a few meetings, just managing. How do you create? I mean, do you do like personality tests for those teams? How do you create those teams, and how do you make sure that they are skill oriented, that they are continuing to, I guess, benefit you and the company in the best way? What does that look like?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. My poet analogy: process, objectives, expectations, tools, and training. I want to make sure that they understand that, and then I keep myself accountable, and then I hold them accountable to it as well, and they know what the expectations are. So, and if they don't meet those expectations, we have a conversation. Or if I somehow fail them, we have a conversation about it. But it's interesting. I share this with people all the time. Like, I'm not a very organized person by nature, and I realize that. So I've I time block everything. I put everything on my calendar to keep me kind of on track. Because people say all the time, like, you manage a fairly large number of people, and like, how do you do that? How do you manage? And I'm like, they're like, you must be so organized. I'm like, I'm not organized at all. Yeah. But I realize that's a weakness of mine, so I force myself to do something different. And I think that's good as an entrepreneur too. Like, if you know that you're weak in some area, get help in that area. Do something in that area to kind of prop that up.
Yeah. And in a group, when you lead, what signs in a person tell you that someone's ready for more responsibility or for a higher leadership position?
Kind of that drive. I think most people that want to do more will ask to do more. And that's what I would recommend to anybody. If you're in a situation where you want to grow or become a bigger leader or a better leader, is constantly ask for more, or constantly ask, what can I do more? How can I do more? And I have several people in my organization now that are kind of on that track. They're constantly like, I feel like instead of pushing them, I'm almost holding them back because they want to do more and more and more. And that's where I go, okay, this person has that drive,
Yeah. And for someone who's trying to look for that drive, or someone who hasn't found that drive yet, what would you recommend for them? I mean, just to try to push themselves to just continue and move and get past other people.
Yeah. Here's what I've learned. Being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. And so if anybody's listening to this or thinking about this, like, entrepreneurship might not be for you.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be able to recognize that. Not everybody, if everybody could be a business owner, there would be no employees, right? And so I think, and there's nothing wrong with it. Some people that's just not their makeup. So to try to say, hey, how do you teach someone to have drive? I think some of it's just kind of inherent. You either have it or you don't. Or you have the ability to kind of, through constant repetition, kind of start building that. But, entrepreneurship is not for everybody.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And if someone were, let's say, go into real estate, they didn't have a lot of money, they didn't have a lot of connections, what would you kind of lead them to do to try to build that connection, leverage that, whatever they have around them? What would you?
Yeah, what's funny? Everybody always says, I get that question a lot. Like, a new young agent be like, "Hey, I don't know a lot of people." Yeah. The first thing I'll say is, pull out your phone. How many contacts do you have in your phone? And people are shocked. They're like, "Oh, I have like 500." I'm like, "That's a lot of people that you know." So you got to start there. Start calling people right now.
Yeah.
Tell them what you do. Ask them for help. I think people, if I were to call you. We have a relationship, and I say, hey, I'm starting this new business, and I want your help. Inherently, me, you like me, you'd be like, okay, how can I help?
Yeah.
So I think first of all, you got to ask for help,
Okay.
And then you got to teach people how they can help you.
Yeah.
And in real estate, it's going back to what I said earlier. You got to have 3 to 5 conversations a day, every single day. It might be at Starbucks. It might be at the car wash. It might be at the dentist when you get your teeth clean. Like, remind people of what you do and ask them how they can help you.
Yeah.
And most people don't know how they can help you. Like, if I was one of your friends and I just got my real estate license, in your mind, you might be going, well, I'm not going to buy or sell a house. How can I help Greg?
Yeah.
Well, you can help me by becoming a referral advocate for me. Like, looking for opportunities that you could, you're with another one of your friends and they said, hey, I'm thinking about buying a home. Okay, you should talk to Greg.
Yeah.
So it's having those conversations and teaching people how they can help you, because oftentimes they just don't know how they can help you.
Yeah. And looking back on your journey, kind of just starting to close it out, what would there be anything that you would change?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think it would be easy and insincere if I said, well, I made this mistake. I wish I wouldn't have done it. And there's probably, if I were to think about it, I probably messed up a lot. But I think that kind of molds you and kind of helps you become the person that you are, or the business person that you are. So I don't know. I don't have any regrets.
Yeah.
I really don't.
And lastly, just you have done so much and you continue to push and continue to, stay on the grind. Where does that come from?
I think if we were to sit in front of a psychiatrist or psychologist or something, we might go deep back into my childhood. But I think, things that happen to you in life or things that you go through in life, like I said, can really shape you. And I think that grind came from just not having a lot when I was growing up and not having a lot of opportunity. And I just knew from a very early age, like, I don't want to be in this kind of situation my whole life. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to kind of alter the path of that.
Yeah.
And even alter the path for my kids and give them opportunity that I never had. So for me, it's like going back to what I've mentioned a couple of times now. There was no plan B, because I knew that there was a chance of failure, but I knew it wasn't going to be because of lack of effort, energy, all those other things that we already talked about. So
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, man.